Hello loves and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to have a conversation about death work, which I think is very needed to understand what death work is, and diving into how you can incorporate it in your practice, which a lot of us do anyway. You just don't call it death work. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. It's gonna be a short video because you guys know I can talk a lot. But before we get started, do not forget to sign up for the Intro to Spiritual Herbalism 101 workshop that we're going to be doing next week. There's still a few tickets left, so definitely make sure you sign up because it's going to be part one of the next couple of months of us working with herbs, because I want to focus more on herbal education. You guys are going to get a video from me on different herbal books I recommend and stuff like that. That's coming. But I want to make sure that we do this workshop as well because I want to do the introduction on working with plant medicine as well. So that's what that workshop is about. So with that being said, definitely make sure you get your tickets down below. If you're a Patreon member, High Priest, High Priestess level, you automatically have tickets. And if you can't make it on said day, the link itself, you can rewatch the video. It's always available for rewatch. So definitely make sure that you check it out because it's something that it's like, if you can't make it on that day, like I make all of my workshops like replayable. If you happen to miss one and need the other, it will be posted on Patreon as well. So you can always check it out there. Now, with that being said, what is death work? So death work focuses on working with the transitionary energy of endings, but as well as beginnings as well. I don't want you guys to see death work as, I feel like a lot of the time within the spiritual community, there's a lot of demonization about different forms of spirituality within the community, especially from the love and light community. For no reason. I think different terminologies and different things kind of throw people off, or they make things seem negative, and some people don't like focusing on the negative, so they kind of, shy away from it. But at the end of the day, death work is actually something that happens in every single spell. You're just not calling it death work. So it's important to understand what death work is. And we talked about death work a little bit on the channel because you guys know I am a Santa Muerte devotee. So I work with death itself. But there's different ways to work with death or do death work without being a devotee to a specific like entity that is energy is connected to that transitionary phase of death itself. So it's important to understand the context of how it comes up in other areas. So with that being said, when it comes to death work is all about understanding the beginning and the end of something. Okay. And if you think about it, when you're doing spell work, you are ending something, beginning something, extending something, or closing something off. There's always something that is shifting, right? That moment, that transitionary moment where something shifts is death work. So when you're doing a spell work to help your finances, right? Let's say you need some extra cash flow, you need a new job, you need, you want to do some healing. You're trying to end the period that you have been stuck in with that past energy. You're trying to end that and transition into a new thing with the intentions that you are setting. That is death work. It's just that a lot of people don't see it as death work. When you start understanding and not demonizing death itself as peoples, because one of the things about death is that it's very colonialized. It was the colonizers that have demonized death through all of the religious indoctrination, and through colonization that has made people think so many different things about death. Like a lot of our ancestors, especially our indigenous and our African ancestors, have a really had at that point a really good relationship with death. and working and understanding with that transitionary period of death energy. This is why you can see in different kind of rites, especially when someone passes in different cultures, whether it be in Africa or here, of a lot of the different like rituals and the things that happen afterwards. Like there are certain cultures that will throw parties after somebody died. Like it's a party, which is something that I said I want for myself. Like when I pass, I want a party. I don't want nobody crying over me. I want a party with all my favorite foods and everybody just having a good time. Like I don't want to be like mourned in that way, like at all. I've told my sister this countless amount of times. So she's younger than me, like by 5 years. So if I happen to pass before her, she has duties. But I think it's important to understand how different cultures have also worked with death. And it's important to look at ancestrally how your relationship with death is as well. Through colonization, there has been a very dominating, imposing of death to the point where it has become a fear in many ways, throughout like different peoples and different cultures, due to colonization, because it became something that, while, you know, when it's honored correctly in the cultural context that it stems from, you know, it's something that happens within the community. But when it happens through colonization and the peoples are oppressed and then imposed on, right, with that, with the abuse, and then the end is dying, right? It can feel like, and it has felt like, and it has created this culture post-colonization where death is very demonized, both like spiritually and in different ways, through that. So it's important to understand how you feel about death first, understanding how your relationship with death is, why you feel about death the way that you do, being peoples that are literally still dealing with the trauma of coming out of colonization, and having to deal with, you know, being displaced and all of those kind of things. The relationship to death is very important. There's a lot of trauma associated with death. For some, even like when it comes to the ocean, and having like the ancestors being thrown off and stuff like that, still traumatic to the bloodline. So there's aspects where death itself has become, that transitionary period has become very traumatic because of the way it happened, because it was not honored or done correctly, and because of the circumstance, which is understandable, right? But when it comes to working spiritually, when you are like, let's say you're just coming into your spiritual practice, if you're just learning about spell work, or if you're just trying to heal yourself, or focusing on manifesting, or whatever it is that you're focusing on, you need to understand how death comes into play of your practice, and decolonizing your relationship to death itself. So you're not demonizing it, because part of what you're doing, part of everything that you're doing within your spiritual practice is death work. When you're trying to, let's say you're doing energy healing, you're trying to bring to the ends, some blockages in your body, right? Because you don't want to keep that in your body, right? You're trying to refresh that. You're trying to like have, like, cleanse that away so that you have that new energy, that fresh energy, you know, circulating properly, right? That's death work. Okay, like when you are like drinking a tea because you got a cold, and you're trying to like help, you know, your body warm up so you can get through the cold, overcome this cold. That's death work. Literally, you can apply death work to every single part of your practice, every single part of it. It's just that you have to understand that death doesn't happen in like, it's not always about a physical soul removal from the physical body type of death. It is also a transitionary period. This is why Pluto rules death and transformation, because death is not, you know, it's not the period. A lot of people see death as period. That's the end of the story, period. But what happens to after death, it is a transitionary period. That includes within our spiritual bodies, right, for our souls, but that also includes for everything else. We are transitioning after death. It's not a period. This is one of my favorite quotes from it's from the Mummy movies. I love the Mummy movies. Was death is only the beginning. Because the demonization of death is ridiculous, and it's true. Death is only the beginning. Like, you can do a lot as you transition, as you progress, as you shift. Like, once that end happens, after that end, there's more to come. It continues on. It evolves. Even your own soul, when like, if let's say you passed away and then you're trying to come back or something like that, you're still going through a transitionary period. Your spirit is still going through a transitionary period. You're just not going to be in your physical form. But it's just a lot of people see dying connected to a physical, traumatic, bloody kind of experience, which is not, it shouldn't be the case. We really need to deconstruct and break down how your perceptions of death itself, because it's a lot of it is very, very colonial. Take like herbs, for example, right? A lot of people see dried herbs as like dead. They're dead flowers, like dried flowers, right? But if you look at the journey of herbs, they go through a whole entire thing, right? They're grown, they bloom, they're like high peak of their bloom, and then they start to dry out. But lessons in herbs, one of the things that we're going to be talking about in the next upcoming months, they don't lose their medicinal properties. Yes, there's a benefits of using herbs fresh, and there's also benefits of using them dry. They don't lose their power. They don't lose their power when they're dried. They're not dead. They still have a spirit. They're still able to help your own transitions because they have transitioned into a dry form of themselves, so they can stay like shelf stable for a longer period of time, because they can't stay fresh for years and 2 years of time. Like, you could still work with them when they're dry. They just went through a transition. They're not in bloom in the same way, but that doesn't mean that they're not still valuable, that they're not still in power. And that's kind of the thing about death energy that you need to understand. Going to a transition doesn't make the thing less powerful, doesn't make the situation less of a thing. Like, it's still something that is important. It's still something that is meaningful. It's still something that holds, it has like substance, okay? So when we're doing spell work, when we're like, literally, like, it can be for like literally anything. Like, I'm trying to learn my indigenous language right now. So I'm going through that transitionary period of learning a new language. That's still death work. I'm still going through like not knowing something to now integrating it into my vocabulary, not learning my, hiwatahianta, like within my language. Anytime I'm reading a book, I'm doing death work. You guys know how much I read? I read so much. Your girl is a Ravenclaw. We've talked about this many a times. I spend a lot of times reading. I just looked at my my Goodreads, and I'm like at, I think, 117 books, I think it is. I read a lot. I read a lot in a year. I read a lot in a month. I love reading. I love audiobooks. I love, anytime I'm reading a new book, death work, because I am integrating information. I'm learning something new. I'm going on a journey, a mental journey, right? And then when the book ends, a death happens. That is an end. But then I can begin a new book, and that is a beginning. Okay? Death is only the beginning. It's true. It's literally true. And you can see this spiritually in many different practices around the world surrounding death work, and how different death, like the way death itself has been seen in many different practices, has implications for the community as well. It's very powerful, and it's something that needs to not be demonized as much. Like, I feel like people, like, I wish the love and light community, like, I wish death work was what the love and light community is, because I feel like love and light gets praised and raised up and uplifted all the time, but you mention shadow work or death work or anything like that, and people are just like, whoa, that's not what we're talking about here. And I'm just like, isn't it? When you're manifesting, when you're pulling in and drawing something in for you, you're trying to transition and shift your life. and go through that death process. You're trying to end the current circumstance that you're in so you can shift into that other reality. That's death work, y'all. I really want y'all to get more comfortable with how you perceive your practice, because it's going to help you understand your craft better. It's going to help you understand that in the tools that you're using better, even the crystals that you use, you're doing death work. You're shifting energy, you're doing death work. Like, the second you stop demonizing what transitioning is, it helps you understand your life in a different way. And it also helps you understand different things in a different way. Like, lawyers are doing death work because they're trying to shift the situation in real time, right? When you're at the courthouse and stuff like that, real time transitionary period, right? People who work with food, they're working with fresh ingredients. Sometimes it dies, they have to like remove those ingredients or compost them or whatnot. That's death work. Now, death work literally happens in a non-spiritual context all the time, but does carry spiritual implications. Like, you could see death work as just people who work in the morgue or something like that, but the truth is that death work happens all of the time. All of the time. All of the time, in so many different aspects of our lives. So think about how you feel about the phrase, just death work itself, and think about your practice. Think about what you're doing right now, spell work you're doing, prayers that you're doing, death work, by the way, things that you're trying to manifest, things that you're trying to draw in, how you perceive that, because not demonizing it is going to help you like ground yourself in your practice like 10 times more. Just trust me. Anyway, I wanted to do this little intro into death work because you guys know I work with Santa Marta, but I also focus on a lot of spiritual education, and I want you guys to be well-rounded in your craft, which means that you should understand your craft. So there will be more. We'll be talking about different topics. I love you guys so much. Thank you guys for being here, and I will see y'all in the next video.